I'm running for Congress because my son took drugs and committed suicide. And I'm in a culture war to make sure what happened to my son won't happen to yours. For 40 years, the liberal media has told you that the counterculture is going to bring you nothing but unalloyed freedom and a better life. And to prove this to you, they showed you pictures of happy gay couples getting hitched and happy hippies smoking legalized marijuana. I would like to show you a real picture of the counterculture. They won't allow me to show you a picture of my son lying in a pool of his own blood after he took drugs and committed suicide, but they can't stop me from showing you this is my son when he was 2 years old, and this is a picture of the bullet hole in the window from when he took drugs and committed suicide. That's the counterculture, not freedom, not a better life, not smiling faces, but your son or grandson in a casket. Is your son next? I was just like you. For 40 years, I stood aside while other people's children died of drugs and school shootings. I said I could have done this, I would have done that, but it wasn't my son. Then one day, the phone rang. It was my son. Tomorrow, your phone could ring. Your kids go to the same school, Henry County. They watch the same TV. They listen to the same counterculture music on the radio that advocates drug use. No one's family is safe, despite the fact that thousands of our children have already died of this drug counterculture. The liberals yell, oh, this is freedom, this is America. No, this is not freedom. This is not America. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, the liberals tell you Sodom and Gomorrah is a myth. It's not a myth. I lived there in 1967. It was called Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. I saw people screaming from taking drugs. I saw a person try to commit suicide, and I had to stop them. And now these liberals want to bring this counterculture here? You think they can't do it? They brought it to my home. They can bring it to yours. Far from protecting our children from this counterculture, believe it or not, the liberals in Washington are actively promoting it. John McCain pointed out in the 2008 debate with Hillary that Hillary had voted $1 million of your tax dollars to build a monument at Woodstock, to commemorate, to celebrate the counterculture. I invite Hillary to my home to see a real monument of the counterculture. It is this broken window. It was not broken because my son threw a baseball. It was broken because my son took drugs and committed suicide, and that's where the bullet went. As I said at my son's funeral, I will run for Congress. I will run for the Senate. I will run for president, and I will win or I will die. I will bury the counterculture, not our children. And when I win this election, I will take down Hillary's monument celebrating the counterculture and put up in its place a monument to our dead children who died because of that counterculture. And that monument will be of that broken window with a bullet hole in it. This culture war is the first opportunity that we've had in 2,000 years to recognize that what our instincts, our ancestors, and our religions have told us for thousands of years is true. Despite what the liberals tell you, good and evil are not myths, but biological law no more arbitrary subjective than any of the laws of mathematics or chemistry. Just as no moon mission based on the counterculture formula 2 + 2 = 5 could ever get there, no society that refused to abide by the principles thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal could possibly exist. Every farm, every factory, every house, and every spaceship was created by cooperative human behavior, and they would not exist if we killed and stole from one another. This tendency to cooperate with others toward the accomplishment of a common goal is instilled within us when we are raised as children within the context of the traditional family unit. The most important institution in our society is not capitalism, it's not democracy, it's not General Motors, it is the traditional family unit. Now, my son did not die because of an accident. It was not an accident he took drugs. It was not an accident he shot himself. My son died because I and my generation made a choice to follow the counterculture. Now, you must make a choice. If we do not return to the traditional moral compass of civilization, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, the traditional family unit, our children will die. Our civilization will perish, and every farm, every factory, and every house will dissolve and disappear, and this will be a jungle. If we return to the universal order, what you call God will bless America. Our children will thrive, our civilization will prosper, our farms and factories will flourish. The conservatives are losing the culture war because they do not understand the culture war. When Brother Dobson retired from Focus on the Family, he said, quote, we lost the culture war. Brother Dobson, the counterculture cannot create, it can only destroy. Brother Dobson, a house, a car, and a spaceship is not just a technological achievement. It's a moral, an ethical, and a religious achievement. Because it could not exist if we killed and stole from one another. There would be no car. There would be no house. There would be no spaceship. Brother Dobson, the spaceship that landed on the moon is just as much a religious statement as a cathedral at Notre Dame. Brother Dobson, the counterculture can never win the culture war. The counterculture could kill a child. It killed mine. It could kill yours. But the counterculture cannot plow a field. It cannot build a house. It cannot raise a child. The only question is, how many of our children will we allow the counterculture to kill before we say enough? When I saw my son in a casket after he took drugs and committed suicide, I decided I had had all the counterculture I was going to take. And I knew that one day the counterculture would have killed just one too many of our kids with their drugs and school shootings. And on that day, we America would decide we have had all the counterculture we are going to take. Brother Dobson, ladies and gentlemen, the counterculture will stop killing our kids on the day that we're allowed to vote on it. And ladies and gentlemen, that day is today. If I win this election, I will not vote to legalize drugs or gay marriage. I will vote to take back the soul of our children from the counterculture by taking back our schools. I will vote to put thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal on every blackboard in every school in America. It is inevitable that we will win the culture war. It was inevitable that someone like me would go to Haight-Ashbury, adopt the counterculture, and just as inevitable as the sun, the wind, and the rain, he would see his son in a casket. And whether it was one father, or two fathers, or 3,000, or 4,000, it was inevitable that one day one father would look at that casket and say, I will run for Congress, I will run for the Senate, I will run for president, and I will win or I will die. I will bury the counterculture, not our children. We who are trying to stop the counterculture from killing our kids are just as inevitable, just as irresistible as the sun, the wind, and the rain. The universal order put us here today, just as surely as it put lightning in the sky. I'm James Hart, and I approve this message. Paid for by James Hart.